Mr. Speaker. Late shows never come so early. I'm rising tonight to raise an issue that initially I put before the House December 9th of 2025. I'm rather proud of the fact that I seem to be the first member of Parliament to have put on public record, and hopefully people notice, and yes, there is a growing coalition that wants to raise awareness of the issue I first raised here on December 9th, which is Division 5 of within Omnibus Budget Bill C-15, which at over 600 pages takes a while to read and get through and to study. So I want to categorically put it on the record right now that I see no sign that the Conservatives are filibustering Bill C-15, the Omnibus Budget Bill. It takes a while to study a Budget Implementation Act of over 600 pages, and I also believe that since the bill was put on for first reading November 18th, there is no sign of delay since the House, by unanimous consent with my objection, adjourned a day early, December 11th. We've only been back a little while. 600 pages plus, changing 20 different laws takes some time. But the most egregious section of it, I maintain, as I did on December 9th, is the section that says that a minister can, on personal discretion, deciding it's in the public interest, exempt the application of any Canadian law except the criminal code from the application of a law within their area of jurisdiction, and that they will make this public not immediately, not soon, but according to the Act, as soon as it is feasible, with no time limit on that. Since the time that people have become alarmed about this, there has been testimony before committee because just as we just did, we passed at second reading Bill C-15 on division, which means we didn't have a recorded vote, which is why I had to, I haven't been able to state on the record that I can't possibly vote for the Budget Implementation Act as currently drafted with the sections that are found in Division 5. Since then, because it did pass on division to second reading, it has gone to the Finance Committee and other committees for study. And I found it interesting in going over the witnesses put forward, the ways on which they're trying to justify this extraordinary power grab to individual ministers to exempt any entity from the operation of Canadian law except for the criminal code. Now, the defense of this, and at first the defense of this provision first started with the response from the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance, who answered, and said that because Canada has, quote, I'll quote from the Parliamentary Secretary's response, world-class innovators and entrepreneurs, we need to build the strongest economy, we are reducing red tape because Division 5 of Bill C-15 is to amend the Red Tape Reduction Act. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary said as part of this process, quote, we are reducing red tape to broaden the use of something called regulatory sandboxes to help foster and spur research and innovation. Now, since that time, Mr. Speaker, the concept of regulatory sandboxes was expanded upon by the witnesses from the Treasury Board before the committee. Now, the witnesses put forward that there were misconceptions, I'll quote them, misconceptions in the public domain, and they wanted to explain all that because what they said to the committee was that regulatory sandboxes, quote, are a well-established governmental tool to allow testing of innovative products. Where does this well-established governmental tool come from? And where is it defined? Well, even after going back to amend the Red Tape Reduction Act, C-15 doesn't include any definition of regulatory sandbox.
I do have to interrupt for the honourable member and proceed to the response. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the honourable member from Sandwich Gulf Island for an important question. As our economy pivots and modernizes, it's important to appreciate the fact that existing regulation may not fit the needs of new and emerging technologies. And this can cause significant delays or even stop new products or services from entering the Canadian marketplace. Doing so can hamper Canadian entrepreneurship, innovation, reduce competition, and makes life less affordable for Canadians. That's why in order to help regulation keep pace with innovation, Our government committed in Budget 2025 to expand the use of regulatory sandboxes through amendments to the Red Tape Reduction Act. As you know, regulatory sandboxes are commonly used devices that permit a new product or services to be tested in the marketplace under a temporary set of rules and controlled by regulatory supervision. This can help regulators safely decide whether to make any permanent regulatory changes to how that product or services should be regulated. Our government is of the view that regulatory sandboxes will help support economic growth, reduce red tape, and improve Canada's investment environment by permitting new products, new technologies to get to market in both a safe and efficient manner. However, the concerns raised by the member opposite are valid. I would like to reassure my honourable colleague that it will not be the Wild West. There will be guardrails in place. Indeed, the government has included safeguards in both legislation and supporting policy to ensure regulatory sandboxes are used responsibly and consistently across the government. Our goal is to protect the economy, environment, and welfare of Canadians in the use of regulatory sandboxes. Bill C-15 will not allow ministers to exempt any person or business from any federal law for broad policy purpose. For example, legislation includes several safeguards, including providing clear time limits for exemption, requiring exemptions be in the public interest, requiring that public health, public safety, and the environment be protected, limiting exemption to individual entities, exempting entire sectors of an industry or fast-tracking entire major project is not within the scope. This legislation also includes explicit transparency and accountability requirement, which will allow for continued oversight and prevent executive overreach. Minister must publish exception orders and explanation of the decision-making process while protecting confidential business information as required by law. Furthermore, the President of the Treasury Board must table an annual report in Parliament listing all exemption orders issued in the previous fiscal year, the rationale for each, and the ministers responsible. This oversight mechanism ensures Parliament is informed and able to scrutinize the use of these authorities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, member for Sandwich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll try to watch the clock carefully because I can't possibly take apart even the conditions, so-called, that are found at subsection 3A through E on page 301 of this bill. They are highly discretionary. It does no such thing as create guardrails. It may create small children waving by the side of the road. It is not a piece of legislation that is well drafted, nor do we have any of these terms defined. Public interest, regulatory sandbox, the minister is allowed to work within their own discretion, and furthermore, Mr. Speaker, the transparency could be as much as a year after the exemption has been granted that a federal law doesn't have to be obeyed. I would prefer better drafting, Mr. Speaker. I urge the government to amend C-15. If they mean what they have their Treasury Board Secretariat say in committee, they ought to have drafted it to say so.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, ministers could not use these provisions to exempt themselves or others from obligation under statutes, for example, like the Conflict of Interest Act. The authorities apply only to laws within a minister's portfolio and only for the purpose of testing and innovating under regulatory supervision. Nor is it intended to bypass important protections and lead to regulatory changes that compromise safety or environmental standards. Mr. Speaker, regulatory sandboxes are a valuable tool. We will use them to support innovation and to help grow our economy, make it more competitive by creating environments and processes for a company to grow in a way that continues to protect the best interest of the Canadian workers, consumers, businesses, the public, and the environment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.